Sometimes BookTalk books are good. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie. The background's a little bit different if you've noticed. My roommate actually recently moved out and so I was able to rearrange the furniture. So earlier today I finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett and I am obsessed with this book and I just need to talk about it. This isn't gonna even be like a review, it's just good book, go read it. But I really recommended this to my sister and I think she is going to read it and so I can't like talk with her about this book. I don't want to spoil it for her, but I need to talk about this book. So I'm just going to put all of my thoughts on the internet, right? So I think this book was included in either the Illumicrate or Fairy Loot book subscription thing, or maybe both, earlier this year, and BookTalk exploded with it. I couldn't go like a day without somebody recommending this book, and it was on my radar as soon as I saw the first video about it because it seemed like a book I would enjoy, but it wasn't really until Carrie Can Read's video when she included it in her monthly wrap-up that I was like, yeah, that I need to read this book. I'm a little bit late to reading it, because I couldn't actually find it in the bookstores that I frequent. I only have a couple bookstores really close to me. They might have just been out, or maybe I was overlooking it. I don't know. I just couldn't find it. And so I finally bit the bullet and bought it off of Amazon, which I hate doing. I also had it for a really long time before opening it because I wanted to really savor this book. I knew I was going to enjoy it. I knew it was going to be good for me. And I didn't want to feel guilty about reading it when I had like other books that I had planned to read ahead of time. So I finished those books, some books that had been on my TBR for a long time, and I finally picked this up and I devoured it so fast. It's a fast read. It's kind of a small book, but it also just like was so good I couldn't put it down. If you are somehow unaware of this book and what it's about, this book is about Professor Emily Wilde, a woman who studies fairies. I believe the term that she uses is a dryadologist, but basically a folklorist. This is a world where fairies exist. She has spent her life piecing together all of the folk tales and meeting fairies and trying to understand their world and how they work and things like that, and it's so cool. Like anybody who's a book nerd, I've been obsessed with folklore and fairy tales since I was a kid. I grew up with like the Fairyopolis books, reading fantasy, kid fairy books, like everything I could get my hands on. As I grew up, I took a deep interest in mythology and folklore, specifically Celtic, Anglo-Saxon, European mythology and folklore, because it's just so interesting, and trying to like puzzle piece everything together is so interesting and cool, and I love it. And so many other people share this like love with me, but also like, I don't know, it's so unique, each person's perspective and like what they choose to use as a primary source and what they believe in, or all the pieces that they cobble together technically and like melt in a melting pot to believe in. It's also unique to each individual person, and it's amazing, and I love talking about fairy tales and folklore, and this book is just it's the perfect book for that. It's just amazing, right? A lot of times when you see modern fantasy fairy romances, it's either ACOTAR, where the fairies are just a fantasy land and it's just a person with wings and magic and they're exceptionally strong or smart, or they try and make it like super dark where fairies are like malevolent and gross. I actually recently read and reviewed a book on my channel that has more of that kind of fairies. You Let Me In by Camilla Bruce talks about these entities in a young girl's life who she calls fairies, but they're like dead things, and it's very weird, right? And so that's kind of the spectrum, either just regular people with wings and they're hot and sexy versus evil, scary, dead things that you should be scared of, right? My hands weren't in frame for that, but And this book is smack dab in the middle of that. It is like quintessential folklore where fairies are sometimes helpful, sometimes malevolent. They'll try and trick you into doing things, or they'll try and take you. There's malevolent changelings and like fairy royalty that's like mean and like uses mortals or kidnaps mortals. But then there are also helpful fairies like brownies, or there's an Irish, I'm going to pronounce the word very wrong, but it's, oh gosh, what is it? I'm going to pronounce the word very wrong because it's Irish, but Oiksiv the oiksiv, I don't know. I'm sorry. I've never studied Irish. I just know it doesn't look the way it's pronounced. But anyway, those kind of fairies that, you know, the shoemaker and the elves, helpful, you know, they use their trickery, but also you can get gifts and goodness. That's that kind of folklore, right? And I love that. In reviews, I see a lot of people compare the vibes of this book to like the Fairyopolis books, but also Howl's Moving Castle, both the movie and the book. And I would say this is closer to the book in its elements of cozy fantasy, but I understand why people's like first reference is the movie. And I totally understand. I haven't read the Spiderwick Chronicles books, but I've seen the Spiderwick Chronicle movie, and I think this is also similar to that. So kind of like Fairyopolis, Howl's Moving Castle, Spiderwick Chronicles, all of that mixed together just makes this book, but also make it a little bit more mature. This video is going to be so disjointed because I'm talking about my thoughts, and I don't know what to say. I love this book so much. This book had me fangirling. I don't really like the word fangirl or fangirling because it seems very dated. It's very 2010s Tumblr. I was, oh my God, horrible fangirl when I was a teenager. That's the only way I can describe it. It just made me giddy. I was kicking my feet. I actually scared my cat this morning because I got to a really sweet scene, and I was just doing that like this in bed, and my cat got scared. And that's the only way I could explain this book, is that it just made me feel giddy and cute and romancy, and I loved it. I just loved it. So when I first joined like BookTalk and started using the BookTalk tags before I could actually curate my algorithm, it was very spice oriented. It was people talking about dark romance, this spicy book, that spicy book, this. I can't tell you how many times I've started watching a video and then realized it was ACOTAR and I had to click not interested. And it's so annoying trying to curate your videos away from the algorithmically popular spice-oriented books. Spicy romantasy, like that, it's kind of hard to get out of that sphere in BookTalk if you're just joining it. This book is so different from that. I knew from Carrie's video and from other videos, I've seen other people talk about how this was zero spice, it's cozy romance, it's adorable, it's very, very, not immature, but demure is a good word for it, very demure. But this book, I was so expecting to like turn the page and, you know, there would be a hot and heavy makeout scene, like maybe there wasn't spice, but there were a lot of descriptions of like how hot and sexy he was, or like the feelings that the sexual feelings that they have. No, there's none of that, and it was perfect. I've never seen an adult oriented book. The characters in this book are 30. I've never seen an adult oriented book that didn't have those kind of descriptions, and it was so refreshing and beautiful because it's so romantic without having to go into the sexual aspect of it, but you can still sense that it's not like a puppy love kind of romance. It's deep emotional feelings for each other, and I love that. It's so good. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just me gushing over this book. I knew I was going to like it going into it, and I can't even tell you how surprised I am that I liked it this much, because it's everything I've ever asked for in a book, and I want to live in that world. It made me blush. It's fluffy. It's fluffy. It's fluffy, and it made me blush and giggle. And I was sitting there reading it, and the male main character is tall and blonde with green eyes, and my boyfriend is tall and blonde with green eyes, and I don't know. I'm just gushing over it right now. I don't know what else to say. It's a very fast read because it's stream of consciousness. The professor, Emily Wilde, is writing in her journal basically what's going on. And so like sometimes she's talking about day-to-day minutia, what happened, but then other times she's like, this happened, and then a week later this happened, you know, those kind of things. But it also didn't feel like I was missing anything or that it was too rushed. It's a fast read, but it's not a rushed read. And it just is very well paced. It's very well, like the world is so well made, and I wanted to live in it. And when I went into this book, I knew it was going to be cozy fantasy, but I thought for a minute that it was going to be very low stakes. So many other cozy fantasy like recommendations say that it's like low stakes. It's just a fun romp. There's not much happening. It's just cozy fantasy. It's just vibes. That's not this book. This book still had stakes. It still had some even gruesome aspects in it. Some an aspect I want to talk about a little bit, but like it fit in the world because you know that fae are dangerous. So like the gruesome aspects weren't like that bad, and like they didn't seem out of left field, and they didn't really. It was a good juxtaposition or dichotomy between the coziness and the dangerous fae gruesomeness. One thing I do have to mention, this is very niche, but I personally have a phobia of dismemberment. I can't think about it for too long without getting queasy. I can't watch a movie scene even knowing it's fake. Blood already makes me queasy, but the thought of like a dismemberment, a limb getting cut off, something being severed, that really makes me queasy. There are some aspects, especially in fiction, where there's like a suspension of disbelief. Like I obviously know that actor's head didn't get cut off, but when it's like a finger, a foot, something like that, my brain just can't tell the difference that that's not real. And so then it really makes it difficult for me to, I don't know, it's an actual phobia. I've like broken down crying because I've seen things on TV or not on TV about dismemberment and that kind of stuff. It really is bad for me. And I feel bad because I know there are a lot of amputees out there where removing a limb has saved their life. And so it feels a bit rude to be scared of that. And that's a me problem. There is a part in this book where it's not very long and it's not very gruesome or in depth, but she does talk about taking off a limb, one of her digits. And so if you are also worried about that, just be warned. That's in there. Like I said, that's a very niche thing and it's very targeted for me, but nobody told me that there was going to be like gore or anything gruesome in this because it was just labeled as a cozy fantasy. And so when that happened, I had to set the book down because like I said, that's a phobia of mine, like an actual fear for me. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there because when I was on Storygraph, there wasn't like a tag for dismemberment, like in the content warnings. There's like gore and body horror and like blood and stuff, but no dismemberment, which is different because some body horror and some gore I can take, but like dismemberment is not something I can take. So nobody thought to say that because it's kind of a small part in the story, but it's something big to me. But if there are other people who have a fear of gore or dismemberment, there's things that like that in this book. They're not super in depth and they're not super graphic, but it does happen. So be warned. Other than that, 5 out of 5 stars. 5 out of 5 stars for this book. Absolutely. I don't know what else to say. I'm so glad that it's not a standalone. I thought for a while it was. I don't know why I thought it was. I guess nobody else talked about it being part of a series. It doesn't say like number 1 of a series, but I'm so glad that it's a series. I can't wait for the next book. I don't know when it's coming out. I don't know if it's been announced or what the name of it's going to be, but I'm so glad I get to return to this world. This is so great. And I'm definitely going to read Heather Fawcett's other books because, oh my gosh, she's such an amazing author and I want to read her other worlds. And if this is anything like her other books, I know in the back of the book it says that she's written middle grade and YA, so I kind of want to see what the YA one is about. Middle grade I can be kind of flimsy on because sometimes I'm like, this is too juvenile for me and I don't want to waste my time on it, but then other times like Animorphs is like amazing. So I think she's going to be closer to the side of Animorphs where even her middle grade stuff is amazing. So I just want to read more of her stuff. Oh my gosh. And I think everyone should. If you are into fairies at all, this is amazing. This is an amazing book. Just read it. And I can't give away too many spoilers. There wasn't anything other than like the gore dismemberment thing that I mentioned before. There's nothing in this book that I would change. I wouldn't even take that scene out. It's just I wish I had been warned about it, right? I don't know what else to say. This is a short video, just me gushing over this book. It's amazing. It's amazing. I don't know how to end this video because I just sat here for 20 minutes talking about how amazing this book is.